There are so many dimensions to his practice, because Atta was not only an incredible painter, printmaker, visual artist, he was also an architect, somebody who developed very consequent public art. He was also a curator and a historian. The painting go beyond the canvas. It's this idea that they can go into the city, they become murals, they become architecture, they become kiosks. Ultimately, he wanted them to become buildings. In Loughborough, near Leicester, Atta Kwami lived in a small house, and there was a top floor, a really magical top floor. Somehow his studio / also archive, it was absolutely crowded with paintings and also with prints. And one really had the impression to be in a young artist's studio. He was doing work, he was full of life, full of energy. Whenever he moved in a city, he actually somehow saw abstraction. It's kind of all started in Amsterdam, because he had this huge studio with 20-foot high ceiling in an old school. In this old school he made large prints. These were woodcuts he printed from plywood. He would cut out the shapes, stack them up against the wall, and he suddenly realized that these huge prints had an architectonic form, and I think that's somehow the moment when he really got into architecture. The kiosks are kind of ambiguous, because on the one hand they are clearly sculptures, they're somehow three-dimensional paintings, but they can also be used. You know, they're basically places to sit down, places to meet, they're places to gather. One of the early ones was in this exhibition of Ockhwy and Weser. It was the second Johannesburg biennial, which really investigated how a biennial can go beyond the white cube, and also happen in the city. Olafur Eliasson flooded the cities of Joburg. Atta Kwami installed a kiosk. It's the influence also of him looking at vernacular architecture in Ghana. Atta kind of was inspired by these makeshift structures and the dignity he felt in these aesthetics. He wrote really extraordinary books on the art history of Ghana. For him, painting, I think, was being in touch. He was in tune not only with the present, but he also was in tune with all the artists who came before him. He was very aware that we stand on the shoulders of giants. And I think this idea of being in tune, like a musician would be in tune, and that's something we can clearly also see in his abstraction. There is something very rhythmic, there's something very musical in his abstraction. It often moves across waves with highs and lows and intervals and pauses and silences. We chose Atta Kwami to be the winner of the Maria Lassnig Prize. We were from the beginning very interested in this idea of a mural, because of course Atta Kwami's work, the painting go beyond the canvas. It's this idea that they can go into the city, they become murals, they become architecture, they become kiosks. We felt it would be wonderful that he could do a public work for the Serpentine, and we invited him to have a look at the North Gallery. The North Gallery was the former munition depot from the Napoleonic age. Then the late Zaha Hadid, of course, added the amazing cafe space. We felt it would be wonderful to use the wall, which was Zaha's favorite wall, behind the space she designed. And she told us, there should be no end to experimentation. And when we were in the studio of Atta Kwami, we saw his many experiments. We saw him draw, we saw him paint, we saw him do artist books, we saw him do prints. He worked a lot on prints with his partner, Pamela Clarkson. We felt, this idea of how he goes beyond the white cube, how he brings art into society, would be interesting to be celebrated. And for Atta, art equaled hope. We live in a world where there is, a lot of separation, a lot of polarization, and Atta really wanted with his works to create togetherness and not separation. And he was thinking about this way of how we can co-inhabit, and how that then can help society.